I had been covering the protests in Hong Kong for 5 months. I had watched the violence escalate in slow increments week by week. If you turn around, you'll see me with yellow vest, gas mask and helmet, a uniform I've worn most weekends since June. But nothing I'd seen to this point would compare to the conflict at PolyU. I first arrived at Hong Kong's Polytechnic University on November 15th. Sieges at universities across Hong Kong had started after the shooting of a protester. Students had blocked a key highway adjacent to the campus and turned the university into a fortress. But to this point, the police had stayed clear. The following evening, the police took up positions around the campus and radical protesters readied for a fight. At 10 a.m. on the morning of the 17th, the police advanced along the streets that surrounded the university. They were met with volleys of petrol bombs and rocks. The police returned fire with tear gas and rubber bullets. And so began a battle that was to last into the night. Later in the day, as the fight intensified, police deployed water cannons that fired a liquid laced with a chemical that stings the skin for hours after contact. I know this as I was hit several times. During the afternoon, a long standoff developed on the streets around the university. Petrol bombs and rocks were carried from inside to the barricades, while the injured were ferried back. Archers fired at police positions from behind the campus defences, hitting 2 policemen with arrows. At 10 p.m, the police set up cordons around the university and announced that the protesters that remained would be arrested if they attempted to leave. The conflict moved to the bridges as the police pushed forward. Some of the more radical protesters responded first with volleys of petrol bombs and then later by setting the bridges on fire. An armoured car tried to breach the barricade but was set on fire with a barrage of gas and petrol bombs. Shortly after midnight, the police held their positions and the protesters retreated back to the campus. The next morning, I left the university and moved to the junction of South Chatham and Granville Roads. A team of 25 policemen had set up a roadblock to protect the cordon around PolyU. The police would charge and arrest 1 or 2 protesters. They dismantled the barricades and then returned to the junction. Minutes later, the protesters returned and set the barricades back up. Thousands of people from outside the university were preparing to break through and rescue those trapped inside. As the afternoon progressed, so more protesters arrived and the fighting became more intense. One misthrown petrol bomb hit an apartment block and started a fire that was later dealt with by the fire brigade. The police team called for backup and were reinforced with a water cannon and armoured vehicle that joined the charges and retreats back to the junction. Protesters hoping to attack the police from a footbridge were quickly dealt with by the water cannon that also took out a group of photographers hoping to get a shot of the action below. As night fell, so the protester numbers grew, now stretching several hundred metres back along the road. A human chain formed to pass supplies to the front lines. At precisely 2 a.m, 14 hours after the conflict began, the protesters left. They had failed to break the cordon and reach PolyU. When I returned to the campus on the following morning, the mood had changed. Some students managed to break out the night before in a daring escape with ropes and motorbikes. Some had found gaps in the cordon. Some had risked the sewers to find a way out, but most had just given up. Slowly, during the day, they marched out, surrendering to the police at the checkpoint.